Hey everybody. Um, this video is meant to really be a review, I think, for everybody. But I want to make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of getting your data into SPSS. So that's the first step that you have to take in analyzing your data, is to enter it into SPSS. So I have a handout that I'm going to read over, which you should have too during the time in which you're watching this video, so that you can go step by step with me how to enter this data into SPSS. So let me share my screen here and get that for you. Okay. So here is an example of a study. Okay. I actually have two studies on here on this example, and I do it in two ways. One, the experiment is being done as repeated measures, or two, the experiment is then done as independent groups. Because entering your data into SPSS can't be done unless you know how to do it properly. And doing it properly really depends on knowing the design of your study. If you're doing repeated measures, the data has to go in a certain way. If you're doing independent groups, your data has to go into a certain way. It's different. So what I want to do is look at this experiment in two different ways, one as repeated measures and one as independent groups, and then enter the data properly. And that's just going to be the first step in this particular video, is just simply entering the data. I'm also going to enter the participant data as well, because you'll have to do that for your experiment, and put your demographic information into your paper in terms of your sample size, what the gender breakdown is of your sample, as well as ethnicity and age. And so I'm going to just put in some fake data there, so that way you'll know how to do that for your paper as well. So here I have 10 Bucks County Community College students. My independent variable for my study is music, and it's at 2 levels. So it's either familiar music versus unfamiliar music. And what am I trying to see its effect on? My dependent variable is memory. My dependent variable, though, in terms of operationally defining it, is the number of images correctly recalled. All right, so some of you are still struggling with that dependent variable as operationally defining it. So even though this is a study on music and memory is too broad. Okay, memory is a concept that you have to operationally define. In this particular experiment, the dependent variable is not necessarily memory. When I operationally define it, it's the number of images correctly recalled, because that's how I'm going to measure it. So here's my procedure. This experiment uses a repeated measures design. Each participant took part in each level of the independent variable. Okay, so it's repeated measures, which means that all 10 of my Bucks County Community College students who are in my sample are going to be in the familiar and the unfamiliar task. An experiment was done where 10 participants took part in a study that examined music and memory. Participants were shown 2 slideshows with 20 images on each slide while listening to music. First, participants chose a playlist of music that they were familiar with, and they listened to the music through earbuds while viewing slideshow 1 for 1 minute. Then all the participants were asked to write down as many images as they could remember from the slideshow on a piece of blank paper. Next, the participants chose a playlist of music that they were not familiar with and listened to the music through earbuds while viewing slideshow number 2 for 1 minute. Again, all the participants were asked to write down as many images as they could remember from the slideshow on a piece of blank paper. All right, so again, this is a very, very I'm not giving you serious details about this experiment. All I'm doing here is giving you a very short example of what an experiment would be, repeated measures on music and memory. So here, like I said, this is repeated measures, which means that all 10 participants took part in the familiar music task. They listened to familiar music while viewing a slideshow, not really a slideshow, but a slide of 20 images on the slides. And then afterwards, when there are no more, there's no more images on a screen or anything, then they're asked to indicate what were the images that you remember. So they were asked to write down as many as they could. Second condition is listening to unfamiliar music while viewing a slideshow with 20 images. So then again, being asked to recall as many as possible. So here's our data. Here's the results here. So again, repeated measures, which means that we have 10 participants. Each participant took part in each condition. Therefore, participant 1, now this is extremely important if you're doing repeated measures. These have to match. So participant 1, when they were listening to familiar music, they got 18 images correct. They could remember 18 of those images. Again, participant 1, in the unfamiliar task, when they were listening to music that they were not familiar with, they remembered only 14 of the images. Or I shouldn't say they, this particular participant. Participant 2 remembered 16 when they were listening to familiar music, and 10 when it was not familiar music. This is music. This is what we're looking at, the difference between familiar music and unfamiliar music. Okay, so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to show you how to enter this into SPSS. Okay, so first is repeated measures. So here we go. Click on SPSS. Which can take some time. There should be like music while this is opening up or something. Okay. Okay, get rid of this. We don't need this here. What we need is the data sheet here. All right, before we do anything, over to variable view. Okay, this is data view right now. All right, this what looks like a spreadsheet here, this is data view. We don't want this yet. We want to name our variables. Okay. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Okay. All right. So information that I want you to give me for your sample. Gender. I want to know what your participants' gender breakdown is. So the first one is gender. Put the word, you can put the word gender there. We're not going to go into any other column here except for values. We're going to go into values when we do independent groups. What am I saying? We're going to do it here too as well, right? So for gender, SPSS only understands numbers, all right? So we're here in variable view. We can name our variables. We can use words in this name column here, but under anything else, words don't really work. We need a number. So I can't write in male or female here for my genders here. So I actually have to give it a number. So 1, I'm going to give it a value instead. I'm going to say that my ones are females. So value 1 is female, add. 2 is going to be male. All right, so 1 is female, 2 is male, and click OK. I can make this bigger if I want to. All right. I also want you to tell me the age of your participants. Age is already a number. We're going to just do age as in, you can do mean, median, like that with age, that's fine. So we're going to calculate it using an actual number rather than an age range or something like that. So you can leave that there. No need to put values there. Now ethnicity. Ethnicity will do categories. This will be categorical data. All right, so we can do different values. So 1, boy, I'm not exactly sure how you do Caucasian. I don't like to use the word white, but I'm going to anyway. Actually, that's what I like to do. So we have European American, African American, oops. Okay, this is an example, just an example of what you might want to use here. So the ethnic breakdown of your sample: European American, African American, Hispanic American, 4 is other. So I'll use that as the labels for my ethnicity, okay? Okay, now for my data. All right, so this is repeated measures. I have one independent variable with 2 levels. So with repeated measures, I'm actually going to create a column for each level of my independent variable. So I have familiar music, and you have to put an underscore there between familiar and music because no spaces. You can't have any spaces in the name. And unfamiliar music. Again, I'm not worried about anything else here. These are already numbers, so we're not doing any kind of values here. So we'll go into data view, back over to data, and here's what I've done. I have given labels to my variables. I have gender, age, ethnicity, familiar music, unfamiliar music. So repeated measure is nice because with repeated measures, you can just use these numbers on the left here. So 1 is participant number 1, 2, participant number 2, and so on and so forth. I'm going to make up some data here. I like to view my value labels. So that 1 and 2 for male and female and the ethnic labels, I like to view those things. So view value labels. When you do that, it does this great thing where it gives you have to click in there and it gives you a drop-down menu. So rather than seeing a bunch of 1s and 2s here, I can see the value labels. So if I have I'm going to just put some stuff in here. So I'm not going to make it perfect. Okay, so there are my 10 participants, each gender. Let's put some ages here. Whoops. Okay. So here's the ages. Here's my ethnic breakdown. some stuff up here. Okay. So you would ask your participants in an experiment, you would give them like a demographic sheet or somewhere in your, when you get the data, to also get their gender, their age, and their ethnicity. So I'm just adding that stuff in here. So if we go back to information here, this is the data I'm actually going to input. This is my raw data. These are not means. This is raw data. This is the number correctly recalled by each participant when they were in the familiar and the unfamiliar music task. So right, 17, 14, 19. 19, 16. Okay, so remember, these are participants 1 through 10. This is their data. The important thing is that you make sure that if you're doing repeated measures, that you match their data. All right, so looking across here, all right, so this is participant number 1, who's female. She's 20 years old. She's European American. She recalled 18 images when she was listening to familiar music. All right, so 14, 10, 9, 15. Complete this. 11, 10, 14. 10, 10, 10. Okay. I'm using this teeny tiny computer that Bucks gave me, and I'm not used to it. It's very, very tiny. So let's go back here. So first participant, female, 20, European American. 18 images were recalled with familiar music. 14 images were recalled with unfamiliar music. Participant 2, male, 18 years old, African American, recalled 16 images with familiar music and 10 images with unfamiliar music. That's it. That's all I have to do in terms of entering my data for repeated measures. And that's all we're going to do in this particular video. Data analysis is going to come up next in another video. Okay, let's go back. If I did this independent groups, I have the same students, let's say, all right, the same exact. The only way it's going to be a little bit different for me, the only thing that's going to be different for me is how I set up my actual raw scores. The participant information is going to be the same in there. But here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the same exact number of participants, 10 Bucks County Community Colleges, college students, independent variable, music, familiar versus unfamiliar, dependent variable, number of images correctly recalled. My procedure. This experiment uses an independent design, okay, independent groups design. So each participant will take part in only one level of the independent variable. So they're going, we call it a grouping variable. Remember, these are groups rather than in repeated measures where everyone does every condition in the independent variable. These are groups now. So it means that participants will either be in familiar or the unfamiliar music group, okay? Not both, or. So an experiment was done where 10 participants took part in a study that examined music and memory. Participants were shown a slideshow with 20 images on the slide while listening to music. That's the general. 5, so I took half of my participants. So 5 of them chose a playlist of music that they were familiar with. and listen to the music through earbuds while viewing the slideshow for 1 minute. So because this is independent groups, I do not need 2 slideshows. I need 1. I'm going to show the same slideshow to both of my groups. The only thing that's going to be different is that one group listens to familiar music, the other group listens to unfamiliar music. The slideshows are the same, okay? So here, I have 5 who listen to familiar music. After they watch the slideshow, then I ask them to recall as many images as possible. Then I say goodbye to those 5. See ya. In comes my next 5 participants. I then ask them to find a playlist of music that they are not familiar with and listen to that music through your earbuds while viewing the same slideshow, okay, for a minute. Then they are asked to write down as many images as they can on a blank piece of paper. All right, so this is independent groups. When we set up our data in SPSS, we need a grouping variable. This is just the best way I can think to tell you to do this. Independent groups, grouping variable. What that grouping variable is your independent variable, because you put them in 2 different groups, your participants, familiar or unfamiliar. Here's my data. Okay, my familiar group, I only had 5 participants in this. I had 10 participants total, but since it's independent groups and I broke them down into 2 groups, familiar, unfamiliar, I only have 5 participants in each. So participant 1 here got 18 correct. Participant 2, 16, 3, 16, 4, 19, 5, 17. Participants 6 through 10 listened to unfamiliar music. So participant 6 had 14, 7, 10, 8, 9, 9, 15, 10, 11. Okay? So let's see how we set this up in SPSS. Now, your participant information is exactly the same, okay? We set it up in exactly the same way, all righty? Or do we? Here, hold on. Oh, right. Okay, so here's what we do here. I still do have to match this stuff here. So, should I make a space here? Okay, let's do a grouping variable first. So, familiar music versus unfamiliar music, we had 2 columns for that when we had repeated measures. Okay, 2 columns for repeated measures. For independent groups, we need a grouping variable, which essentially is our independent variable. So we want music. Okay. Music is our independent variable. Like we did with gender and so on and so forth. We need values. Familiar. So here's my familiar group. Oops, here's my unfamiliar group. Okay. Grouping variable for independent groups. Okay, it's my independent variable. Okay, so music is my independent variable at 2 levels, familiar and unfamiliar, and hit OK. I'm going to go back here. All right. All right, so again, here's where the whole matching has to come into play here. All right, so I have Pretend these aren't here, okay? So for independent groups, I'm going to, again, I have to match my participant with the group. All right, so again, we're gonna pretend here. So remember, all the way on the left, participant 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And there's their breakdown, okay? So participant 1, okay, I'm gonna view my value labels here as I did before. Participant 1 is female, she's 20 years old, she's European American, and she's in the familiar group. Participant, no. Okay. And you don't have to have these in order, but this is just the way I would do it. That would get all of my participants together. And when you have a ton of data, you can't do it like this. This is just like I'm showing you the tip of the iceberg here with only 10 participants here. So participant 1 is female, she's 20, she's European American, she's in the familiar group. Participant 2 is male, 18, African American, he's in the familiar group. Participant 3, female, 19, Hispanic American, familiar. Participant 4, male, 22, European American, familiar. You get it. Okay. Now what we have to add here is the dependent variable. All right. So we have an independent variable in one column, which is music, familiar and unfamiliar. Now, in order to add our numbers, our dependent variable, let's give it a variable, sorry, let's give it a label here. So how about images recalled? Okay, images underscore recalled. We're putting numbers into this column here, so we do not need any kind of labels. Okay, back to my data. 18, 16, 16, 19, 17, I'll never get that. Okay. So here is my familiar task, okay? Images recalled. 18, 16, 16, 19, 17. Those are the 5 people who were in the familiar group. That's how many images they recalled. My unfamiliar group, 14, 10, 9, 15, 11. Ta-da! All right, so here I have, in my unfamiliar group, participant number 6, female, 20, Hispanic American, 14 correct. Participant 7, male, 21, European American, 10 correct. All right, this is how you put your data into SPSS. Repeated measures versus independent groups, okay? Your gender, age, ethnicity is the same. So your participant information goes in here the same. You have to make a value label for gender, no value label for age because you're putting in a number, and you have to have a value label for ethnicity because it's a category, not a number. So how you put your data into SPSS depends on whether you're doing independent groups or repeated measures. Alrighty, so this is step one into entering data into SPSS. I will be back in another video to show you how to analyze